The Bible is not just another book that you choose to read or not. It's not about personal preference, a hobby, or anything like that. It's also not meant to bring good luck if you open in your living room. It is the manual of life, which means that if you live by and apply the codes found there, your life will be abundant. What you may not have fully understood yet is that God is the most abundant being in existence. He is the owner of all gold and silver, and most importantly, He never goes back on what He promised. Everything He said would come to pass, will come to pass. In other words, it's already done. But Danilo, if it's already done, why don't I see the fruits that tree in my life? Because you need to access it and persist until it happens. You know what confuses you in this process? It is that it seems like it's free, and that's confuse you. Not that it's free, because it's not free, just the love. Love is something free. But in this case, you don't pay with money. You pay with giving yours of yourself. And since you are in such a hurry, you ended up in misery. Didn't Solomon say this in Proverbs? Well-planted plans lead to plenty, but the hasty ended up in poverty. Proverbs 21:5. Here, many people make two big mistakes: being hasty and focusing too much on making plans without concentrating on what really matters. Do you know what really matters in your life? The system. Hurry makes you want to quick results, and excessive planning without execution traps you in empty dreams. Do you know why? Because making plans and dreaming is easy, but what will truly bring abundance is what you do every day. The system you create and follow consistently. When you change your system, abundance becomes inevitable. For example, it's no use just planning to save or invest if you don't create a system where every month you set aside part of your money, at least 20%, or if you don't train your brain, your habits to control your spending impulse, the plans stay on paper. It's what you do daily that shapes your future. In the past, I made very common mistakes. I create big, grand plans, dreaming of magnificent things I wanted to achieve, but I wasn't consistent in the little things. I wasn't faithful in the small tasks of every day. Do you know what happens when you focus only on the big and forget the faithful, the small? You get stuck in a cycle of frustration. Like this. The Bible teaches us something very clear about this. Whoever is faithful in little will be entrusted with much. Look at that. Will be entrusted with much. Remember the idea of blessing far beyond what is necessary. The code is here. You've heard the saying, the devil is in the details, right? The details are the little things. Being faithful in little means being faithful in the small, seemingly irrelevant things, your habits, emotions, diet, time. It's no use dream of big things and great achievements if you don't have the discipline to be faithful to what's in your hands today. I used to think this was nonsense until I learned the hard way to no matter how grand the plans was, if I didn't take good care of what was already under my responsibility, nothing would move forward. Do you know what that's called? That's called a word that I love: self-governance. I want to see huge results, but I didn't dedicate myself to organizing the basics, and the results: impulsively, wrong decisions, and of course, frustration would always return. Then I changed my way of thinking. I started being faithful in little, focus on organize the small things, and that's when everything began to change. Before dreaming of big investment, I organized my monthly budget. Before thinking about having more money, I learned to control my smaller expenses, and little by little, this creates a solid foundation for the bigger plans to be realized. Practical application: start small. Whatever you decide to do, just start small and focus on being consistent with what you have now. Govern over the little, and He will entrust you with more. But Danilo, I want to leverage. You talk about this all time. You keep saying that without leverage, you don't explode. Yes, that's true. But first, you must learn to govern over the little. But if you want to leverage, understand how to use debt intelligently. The Bible warns us about the dangers of debt, but what you often don't understand is that there is a type of debt that can be used strategically in your life. The problem isn't taking a loan or using credit. It's where you are directing that money. If you go into debt to consume, to cover daily expense, you are being a slave to debt. But if you use credit wisely to invest in something that will generate return, ROI, you are using debt as leverage. Here's the key point. Don't take on debts for consumption. Take on debts for capital. The difference between the two is enormous. Consumption debts are those taken to maintain your lifestyle, like buy a car, cell phone, or a trip you can afford to pay upfront. These debts consume your future. Capital debts, on the other hand, are those you take on make investment that will bring you return in long run, like invest in a business or an asset that can increase the value. These debts build your future. Here's where many make mistakes. They go into debt to pay things that depreciate, and they end up trapped in a cycle of installments, interest, and more debits. This is what the Bible calls financial slavery. But Danilo, doesn't the Bible say never go into debt? Just look at Proverbs 22. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. No, you fool. What the Bible teaches is that you must have wisdom when dealing with your finances. Remember in Matthew 25, in the parable of the talents, the servants who multiplied what they received were rewarded. This means that using your resource to generate more is a blessed practice. If you borrow and invest in something that will grow and bear fruit, you are being a good steward of what God has entrusted to you. But if you use credit to spend on things that bring no return, you are putting at risk the future that God wants to deliver to you. Practical application. Start thinking your debts as tools. Before taking any loan or using credit, ask yourself this question: will this generate a return, or it only bring me more expenses? If the answer is that will generate a return, like an investment that can take you to another financial level, then that debt can be strategic. On the other hand, if the debt is to maintain your lifestyle, think again. Be faithful in the little. Start organize your finances with small step, but have the wisdom to use credit as instrument of growth, not slavery. Now, one of the strongest codes I've seen in my life, but that I took from Bible, is to be generous. Being generous is proof of pure wisdom. Solomon already said, one gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what they should give and only suffers want. Proverbs 11:24. Your mistake is that you are not generous, you are just goody. Being generous has nothing to do with being good or doing things to please others. True generosity comes from a heart that overflows, that has compassion for others. It is about having so much of something that you can hold it for yourself and you want to share with those in need. If you grasp this code, you will get rich in a few months. God teaches us this repeatedly. When you overflow, you multiply. But let me explain the difference between an overflow and a leak bucket. A leak bucket is when you try to hold on to the little you have. But no matter how hard you try, it slips away, disappears, and nothing lasts. This is a kind of person who withholds what they should give, who holds on out of fear of lacking and ends up losing everything. The fear of lack causes the little you have to vanish without purpose. Just like Job from Bible, he said, "What I feared has come upon me." On the other hand, overflow is when you have so much that you can no longer contain it, and it spoils the lives of others. But here is the key: you don't overflow with what you lack, but with what you have in abundance. True generosity comes from the excess that God gives you, whether money, time, or skills. Yes, money is not everything when you are overflowing in the other lives. When you pour out what overflows in your life, you bless others and multiply what you have. Generosity is acting with compassion, seeing the need of others, and understand that God has made you a channel of blessing. It doesn't mean giving until you are empty, but rather giving what you have in abundance. I will give one more practical application. Start viewing your life as a source of overflow, not as a bucket that needs to be emptied to give something to someone else. When you focus on overflowing, whether with your talents, your time, or even financially, you are merely shaping the excess of what God has already given you. I'm Danilo Lion. Follow the channel so I can overflow into the lives of others.